thanks for having me back. I think this is about my fourth time now. So I always enjoy these classes. Also, I appreciate you guys spending your Friday afternoons with me, and I would not judge if somebody was having a cocktail as I talked. It's probably going to make it more digestible for sure. So I founded Lean REQA about 13 years ago, but I have been in industry over 20 years. I've also served as an advisor on the FDA's Good Manufacturing Practices Advisory Committee. And then I make a joke that my primary role in my company is the master grief counselor, because regulatory can bring out the worst in emotions of a lot of people in terms of the grief cycle. This is my executive team at present. They are sleeping under my feet, but that could change any moment if we get the serial killer UPS man. So bear with me if you hear some racket. So today we're going to go through the FDA risk-based medical device classification. We'll talk about 5 steps to market. Once you get your product to market, now what? We'll go through a crash course in FDA pre-submissions and a case study and regulatory pathway analysis. So Spencer, remind me, are we supposed to be right at an hour, or is this like an hour and a half?
An hour.
An hour, okay. So some of this will be just good reference information for you. We probably won't get to all of it. And if we don't, and you have questions on it, it's there for your reference, and you can reach out to me or my team. We're happy to have a quick call with you if you have further questions. So let's talk about the FDA risk-based medical device classification, and stop me at any point if you have questions, and we'll talk about those interactively as we go. So the FDA risk-based medical device classification is broken into 3 primary classifications with one kind of ancillary set of products. So it's in general class 1, 2, and 3. Class 1 makes up 45 to 50% of the market. Class 2, another 40 to 45%. And class 3 is generally about 5 to 10%. There are a set of unclassified devices, meaning that there are really no regulations around them. And this could be for a variety of reasons. Most of them are pre-amendment or existed before the regulations, the product-specific regulations came into effect. Low-risk devices are things that like elastic bandages, examination gloves, handheld surgical instruments. Moderate risk devices or class 2 devices can be blood glucose test systems, infusion pumps, powered wheelchairs, and surgical masks. Class 3 are the higher risk, life-supporting, life-sustaining devices like heart valves, implants, implanted stimulators, and the like. There are a variety of different controls that are applied regardless of the classification of the product. The base level of controls is called general controls. And for every set of controls it will also be a set of coordinating exemptions. So the general controls apply to every set of product classifications, including the unclassified products. These include things like establishment registration and listing, and some very basic quality management system requirements. Then on class 2 controls, have a layer of controls on top of that called special controls. Special controls can include things like special labeling requirements, a product-specific guidance document, a recognized consensus standard, maybe a post-market surveillance requirements or studies. And then there will be a subset of those that are exempt from those special controls, namely exempt from a 510K. In general, class 1 controls are 510K exempt, but not all. Class 2 products require a 510K. Class 3 products require what's called a pre-market approval or PMA. And then there is the unclassified products. The bulk of those require 510Ks. So no matter what, a battery of regulations apply. The kind of bread and butter is called the quality system regulation, or CF 21 CFR 820. These are basically the good manufacturing practices, and these kind of go hand in hand with labeling and medical device reporting. Although all of these, technically apply to all your products, this is where the bulk of the work you're going to have to do is coming from these sets of regulations. So to make a long story short, you have got three basic product classifications, but as a result of the 3 different types of controls and the 2 different types of submissions, really 3 if you count de novo, and the clinical trial requirements, you could see there's kind of a myriad of combinations of controls and exemptions. So it's really not easy to navigate your product classification, your regulatory pathway analysis, because there are so many options or configurations that could exist for your requirements and your exemptions. Where I see a lot of people go wrong is thinking that they won the lottery even if they get the class 1 510K exempt and GMP exempt. But like we talked about, there is a set of basic general controls that is going to apply. The company will have to register their facility with the FDA and conduct device listings, not only for them, for their company, but if they use a contract manufacturer, their contract manufacturer must register and list as well. And these are annual activities. In addition, they have to have a very basic quality management system. This is the only set of requirements and exemptions where you're exempt from most of the quality system regulation. That's that 21 CFR 820. For these products, you still have to have a complaint procedure and a quality record procedure regardless. So any questions there before I move on? Okay.
I assume, Michelle, that it'll be like a guesstimate of the range of cost of each of these different levels of regulatory scrutiny.
Yep, I've got a slide that surmises this kind of at this end of this next section, I believe, or 1 or 2 sections down. And so I'll talk about costs when I talk about how they overall compare side by side. Thank you.
Just want to throw in a comment of that slide that you have that shows the different classes and then the different layers. That's like so important. That's such a huge. The one before this, the 4 quadrants that you had. Oh, I love that.
That one.
Yes.
Yes. Yep. So that's just the graphical or the pictorial depiction of that guy. And so this is like how all of that stacks up, all the iterations. And between that slide and this slide, it's the #1 area where I see people new to medical devices and regulatory make incorrect assumptions about what if they have an exemption, what they do have to do and don't have to do. And then they end up getting in trouble. So you've got generally 5 steps to bring your product to market in the US. Step 1 is to define your product. Step 2 is to verify that your product is a medical device. Step 3 is to determine the class and the pathway. Step 4 is to develop your valid scientific evidence. And step 5 is your pre-market submission. And step 5 is where we'll talk about how the types of submissions compare and the potential costs. So your intended use, and this is going to be the foundation of your entire regulatory strategy. And changing your intended use or your indications for use can have a huge impact to your regulatory strategy and your regulatory submission type. So if you take nothing away from this presentation, it is that is of utmost important to lock down your intended use, your indications for use, and make as few changes as possible. So the definition of intended use is that this is at the core concept at the basis of the FDA regulations. It refers to an objective intent or purpose, which can be shown by labeling, advertising materials, oral and written statements, and implied or expressed claims. You can think of your intended use like an overarching umbrella where your subsets of indications for use kind of fit underneath the scope of that umbrella. Now, an example of an indication for use can be a target population, for example, pediatric or geriatric. It could be a duration for use. Is this product for less than 30 days, more than 30 days, less than 24 hours, 24 hours to 30 days? All of this can make a pretty big impact on your performance testing, especially biocompatibility. Your anatomical sites can also be a big factor in the FDA's consideration for if your product could be considered substantially equivalent to a predicate or not. So let's look at an example of an intended use statement. This product is intended to provide interosseous access in patients when intravenous access is difficult or impossible to obtain in an emergent, urgent, or medically necessary cases. So let's look at what are the subset or indications for use that fall within that. First, we can see we have got anatomical locations in the proximal and distal tibias, the humeral head, and the distal femur. We can also see we have patient-specific requirements or indications in pediatric patients. And we have durations for use up to 24 hours. So now that we've defined what our product is and our intended use and indications for use, let's look at how we would go about verifying that this product is a medical device. Well, the definition of a medical device is primarily, at the foremost, it has to diagnose, cure, mitigate, treat, or prevent a disease or a condition in a way that affects its structure or function of the human body in a way that it doesn't achieve its purpose as a drug. So that means it has more of a mechanical mode of action rather than a chemical or metabolic mode of action. And this is also going to, it includes certain software functions, but it excludes others. So bear with me. These are going to look like super remedial examples, but you will see where I'm going and the importance of that intended use, indications for use, and your claim set. So if we take this product, this light, and we want to make the following statements. It's a modern design and space saver. Well, we could pretty clearly say that's not a medical device. I'm going to say it has an LED light bulb. No, also not a medical device. It's a flexible desk lamp that allows you to adjust light to anywhere you need it on your desk. Not a medical device. No glare reflects on your screen. Also not a medical device. But what if we take a similar light and we say it is compact, space-saving design, and it's easy to move from room to room? No. What if we say its purpose is to regain focus and concentration? Well, maybe. It depends on what is the root cause of your lack of focus and concentration. Is it a medical issue? But what if we say it provides natural spectrum daylight to combat depression? Well, the FDA considers depression a very serious medical condition, and actually in a reclassification of a CES cranial stimulator device, cranial nerve stimulator device. They reclassified. It used to be insomnia, anxiety, and depression in the regulatory indications, and they split them apart, and they made depression a class 3 PMA for the exact same technology, exact same type of device, but the indication of depression became a class 3 and the other two became a class 2. So let's do this one together, or let's take votes. So we've got two very similar products. They're both diapers. One's indication or patient population is for babies, and one's patient population is for adults. So do you think either of them, none of them?
I think the adult pants are the medical device, because adults don't need them, but only adults with medical conditions need them.
That's exactly right. So if we put this simple product through this the steps of qualifying it as a medical device, we're going to make our intended use statement. The infant diaper is intended to protect the infant's garments from urine or stool, whereas the adult diapers are intended to protect an adult's garments from urine or stool, but it's intended to protect an incontinent patient's garments from urine or stool, and incontinence is a medical condition. So the infant diapers are not intended to diagnose, cure, mitigate, treat, or prevent a disease, because you're not born knowing how to control your bowel movements or your elimination. Whereas the adults at a certain stage of life, you should be able to know how to control all of this. And at the point that you cease to lose that ability, at that point, the diapers do help mitigate the incontinence. Neither is intended to affect the structure or function. It does not achieve their intended use by chemical action or by that of a drug. But because the adult diapers are intended to mitigate a disease or a disease state, it is considered a medical device. So now let's look at determining the classification and pathway. Where do you start? Well, the FDA has many databases that you can use that are helpful to look at your product from a variety of different angles. Primarily, these can include the FDA product code classification, the FDA device establishment and registration and listing database, and the 510K database. So the FDA product code classification database, it has search functions, both quick and advanced. Be aware that you will get different results in the quick and the advanced result. So you want to be sure to, if you don't see what you're looking for in one search, that you try it the other way. So if we put in the word mask, you're going to find the following results. And for the purposes of our example, we're going to talk about an FXX, or a basic surgical mask. But this surgical mask could have a different product code. So we're back to needing to be really clear about the indication for use and the intended use to make sure that we've selected the right product code for our product. Now, those potential intended uses can include, we could say this is just a comfort mask. It's not a medical device. It's just basically a dust cover. You could say that this is a surgical mask, so it's intended to have maybe a fluid barrier or some other property that would make it fit for a medical purpose. You could say that this is a surgical mask with an antimicrobial agent, which is another product code because it has a different technological feature with that agent added. We could add a patient population with saying that this is for pediatric or children, and we have a third product code that we need to consider. We could be trying to make the claim that this is a N95 NIOSH certified respirator, in which case FDA has no role in its clearance or approval, even though they have jurisdiction over it. They defer to the actual clearance to NIOSH. So again, you can see that role that the intended use and indications for use. And if, say, you put in a submission as FXX to the FDA for a surgical mask that had antimicrobial agents, you're not going to even make it past the refuse to accept because you didn't have the right product code. So if we go back to our FXX and we look in the product code database about what we can learn, the first thing that we can see is the device classification. We can learn the submission type, if it's 510K, 510K exempt, maybe a PMA. We can learn if it's GMP exempt, can learn the regulation number. By knowing the regulation number will tell us the applicable controls and how the FDA has defined an intended use. We can learn if it's eligible for a third-party review and if there are any recognized consensus standards. Now, recognized consensus standards are really critical to the success of your product development because they can inform required testing. And ultimately, your required testing and acceptance criteria for that testing can inform minimum design specifications. So here we are looking at an actual screenshot out of the database. We've got our FXX. We can see it's a class 2. It's a 510K. We can see the regulation number is 878-4040. We can jump over into the regulation number database. And we can see that we have got the full text of the CFR around this particular device. Now, what's interesting about surgical masks is they fall underneath a very large and encompassing regulation for all surgical apparel. So this is going to tell you, the identification will tell you the FDA's definition of the intended use for these products. And then you're going to have the part B, that's classification, is going to tell you the applicable controls. Now, this particular one is interesting because we have 2 sets of requirements. We've got a set of products underneath these surgical apparels that are class 1 and 510K exempt for any apparel other than gowns and surgical masks. But everything else besides N95s are class 2 special controls, meaning they require a 510K and they require a 510K submitted to the agency. So here we've seen the kind of underpinnings of that are going to be required for our mask here. And now we look at recognized consensus standards. Based off of our product features, it could be any or all of the recognized consensus standards. We can see that is eligible for the third-party review program, and we can see who the accredited people that can review it underneath that program. So this could shave, possibly 100 days or more off of the process. It is a additional fee. However, everybody I know that has been through an accredited persons program, it has turned out to be far worse than going through the FDA. So things that are not listed, that are not going to be found in that list of recognized consensus standards is anything that applies just kind of generally to maybe your device features. Say if you're sterilizing this mask, you're going to have to consider which of the sterilization standards, and it's going to depend on the type of sterilization. These are all things like sterilization, electrical safety standards, biocompatibility standards based off of patient contact, reuse of devices. You have to look in a different database called the Recognized Consensus Standards to be able to find these kind of more general and overreaching set of standards that will apply to your product. So with health monitoring devices, there is a twist with general wellness. And if you have not heard me say it enough already, it's going to come down to your intended use and indications for use. So let's look at a particular app called, this company Bruxy is starting a company that focuses on bruxism. Bruxism is it's a condition where you grind or clench your teeth. It can happen when you're awake or asleep, but it's mainly a sleep-related movement disorder. And so this company, Bruxy, has developed a hardware and software app system. They have got a headband that has a sensor on it and an app. They have one configuration of an app for the user where they can just kind of monitor what their bruxism was over the night. But then they have an app for the clinician that the clinician can use to monitor and potentially diagnose the bruxism condition. So this can be a little like choose your own adventure. This could range from anything like a trip to the fridge. If your claims indications intended use include it's no prescription for retail use by lay users, it could fall into general wellness. As such, it would not be regulated as long as you're careful with your claims. And then you cannot claim biofeedback. That's important, and we'll talk about that as we go here on the adventure. This could be a walk in the park. If you say this is a prescription device, it is for professional use. It could be considered a class 2 medical device, but it could fall underneath a product code called HCC that's 510K exempt. So while it does have a heavier lift, it's not going to require submission to the FDA. However, this could feel a little like a half marathon, where if you wanted to say, take the same device that say it has feedback, but we don't want it to have a prescription, we want it to be for lay use. In that case, that exceeds what the regulation has outlined as the criteria to be 510K exempt. And it would require at least a 510K to the agency, maybe a de novo. So, any questions on that before I move on? Okay.
So we can describe a certain device from different angles, and will it affect our reimbursement process?
It will. Most things that are not regulated by the FDA are regulated under enforcement discretion, like that general wellness products won't be eligible for reimbursement, but there are other payers that may pay outside of like a CMS type reimbursement structure. There may be some other incentive to say insurance companies. for instance. So let's look at developing valid scientific evidence. This one's pretty straightforward. You know, I just constantly see the fight between R&D and quality or regulatory. You're going to need preclinical benchtop testing, things like sterilization, biocompatibility, performance testing. You might need animal and clinical testing, and FDA of increasing popularity has valued human factors and usability testing, especially if you're going to do anything for home use, direct to consumer, wearables, anything where the patient may be interacting with a device on their own outside of a prescription or in a healthcare facility. So let's look at the types of pre-market submissions. These can range anywhere from being 510K exempt to requiring a 510K to being more like a marathon and doing a de novo to being like a Iron Man with that pre-market approval or PMA. If we look at 510K, this is by far and away the most common type of submission with the FDA. This is the market application for low and moderate risk devices. This hinges on an argument called substantial equivalence between your proposed device and another device in the same product code that's already legally marketed. You need to compare intended uses, device features, and performance testing. And in choosing the right predicate is the key, because you want to have as many same or similar elements as possible to base that substantial equivalence determination on. So considerations for substantial equivalence is it has the same intended use as the predicate, and it has the same technological characteristics, or you can make an argument that it has the same intended use, but it has different technological characteristics, but it does not raise new questions of safety and efficacy because the information that you've submitted to the agency shows that it is as safe and effective as the legally marketed device or predicate that you're looking at. So substantial equivalence doesn't mean that your device is identical. It just means that what is different does not raise new questions of safety and efficacy. One thing that's important to note is very important to watch the words you use around your technology when you're interchanging with the agency. Words like novel, first of its kind, new technology is not equal to a 510K process. In fact, the term de novo means of new. And that is that submission type kind of between the 510K and the PMA. So be careful with these if you're trying to make an argument for a 510K. And for startups, this can be a constant tightrope between convincing the patent office that you're novel. We're novel enough, you should give us a patent because there's never been anything like this. And then you turn around and make the argument to FDA that you are not. And then at the same time, you have to balance the right time for your regulatory and quality needs with, you know, trying to get your patents, raise money, and then say, hey, we're just like this other guy all at the same time. So if we look at how to make a substantial equivalence argument, if we say this is our proposed device, and its intended use is that its indications for use is one away, keeps the doctor away, is a thin, waxy outer skin, and a crispy, light-colored, juicy pulp. So which one is the best predicate? It seems, pretty obvious that device A is almost a one-to-one comparison. Device B, you could probably make an argument for it and just say, hey, it differs in color, but the color is really insignificant to the overall intended use and purpose and features, technological features of the device. But device C seems to be a little bit of a stretch. So, because you can't compare apples and oranges, right? Well, that depends. What if this is your proposed device? Its intended use is a fruit. Its indications for use is 1 a day, keeps the doctor away, but it also provides a dose of vitamin C. It has a thin, waxy outer skin and a juicy orange pulp. So that doesn't necessarily immediately throw you out of the discussion for substantial equivalence in 510K. The FDA does have a special guidance out that talks about the use of primary predicates and reference predicates. And so the way you would make this argument is you would pick your primary predicate that you intend to base the bulk of your substantial equivalence argument on. And so you would go through and discuss the similarities, and then where it is different, you would like on this one down here for the type of pulp, you would use this reference predicate specifically for the feature where it differed from the primary predicate. But if you have too many different features or too many different predicates, the FDA is going to look at it like you've created a little bit of a Frankenstein of device, and they're going to just say, we think you're de novo. So types of 510Ks, these can be traditional. These make up the bulk of 510Ks. They can be abbreviated where they're based off of a special controls guidance document that's product specific. They can be abbreviated safety and performance, which is a kind of a newer pathway for the FDA, and it has a very specific guidance document with specific testing and specific acceptance criteria as well. You can have a special 510K, and that means that you already have a legally marketed device and you already own the 510K to it. You could only make 3 changes at a time, and it's very limited in the type of changes that are eligible. So de novo is the next type of submission. This device has no existing classification, regulation, or clear predicate. So that means that in that product code classification database that you really can't find either a appropriate product code or a predicate within an appropriate product code that strongly would serve as substantial equivalence for your device. This is the marketing process for a novel device, either novel technical features or novel indication. It is intended for devices that are of moderate to risk, devices that are likely going to be classified into class 2, maybe class 1. It's really not for higher risk devices. The end of the de novo process creates a new classification regulation. It is an alternate to the pre-market approval, and it's supposed to be a reduced regulatory burden and controls based off of a risk-benefit profile of the device. So a computer-aided device is a good example. You've got several different types of computer-aided devices. You've got those for detection, diagnosis, those that detect and diagnose, triage, and acquisition and optimization. So CADX software for lesions for a specific cancer. If we look at this company, Quantex, did a de novo in 2017. They were granted a de novo that resulted in the creation of a new regulation and product code, POK, that made it a class 2 and included special controls. So now, between the time that this de novo was granted and this regulation came about, then now companies can come direct to market through a 510K rather than going through the de novo process, because now a product code and a regulation exist. So what's the best regulatory strategy for a de novo? Well, maybe it's to break things apart into separate steps or to do them all at once, depending on your funding and your goals. So it is possible that you could start with a base set of features that are easy to get substantial equivalence to, and you could do a 510K and then add in certain features. Maybe you're eligible for a special 510K or using yourself as a predicate, a traditional 510K, and then make the final leap to that de novo for that feature that really sets it apart and makes it not eligible for a 510K in terms of intended use or technology. So what would this look like in terms of time and money? If you bring a base set of products to market underneath a 510K, maybe you could start selling your product and making some dollars to fund your subsequent product iterations and regulatory iterations. You know, in terms of cost, the FDA fees for 510Ks are about $3,100 for small businesses and about $30,000 for de novos. Whereas, you know, the testing, this could be, you know, anywhere from $30,000 to $100,000 a pop for testing for 510Ks, and you're looking well over $500,000 to $1 million plus for to support a de novo. So PMA is for the highest risk devices. Again, these are usually life supporting and life sustaining. These have a reasonable assurance of safety and effectiveness because they have been, the evidence has to stand on its own, because the FDA reviews all the data, like every report, everything, not against how does this compare to the predicate, but can this stand alone to demonstrate safety and effectiveness. So for that reason, these are the only devices that are allowed to say they're FDA approved, because they're the only ones that the FDA goes through with this level of rigor. So the information that you get with the FDA in the PMA database is much more detailed than that available in the de novo or the 510K. You get the summaries, you get the approval orders, you get copies of the labeling, post-approval studies, and all the supplements. So if we look at how the submissions types, cost, and timeframes compare, the 510K is based off of substantial equivalence comparison to a predicate. It's at least 1,500 plus pages. The traditional 510K FDA clock days are about 90, but the turnaround time for 510Ks, the actual agency decision date, is about 200 days. There is not a pre-approval inspection required for almost all of 510K devices, and the user fee is small. So this is the user fee that came out just this year, up from that $3,100 on that previous slide. So now it's about $5,000 for the small business. For the de novo, it's not substantial equivalence. It is of new, but it's a moderate risk. The de novo, this is going to be on the order of, I would probably say, usually 3,000 to 5,000 pages, maybe more. The clock for the de novo is supposed to be 120 days, but these are right around 400 days for review. And it's going to, their fee this year is $33,000. PMAs, in terms of scope, these are 30 plus 3-inch 3-ring binders. It's a massive undertaking. That's why I make it equivalent to the Ironman races. Supposedly the FDA's clock is 180 days, but these have been around 800 or so review days. You have to have a pre-approval inspection, and their fee for small businesses is $110,000. It's important to know and to use the terminology correctly, especially after you get your submission cleared or approved on your websites. Authorization is not the same as being cleared, and it's not the same as approval. Authorization comes through the EUA process. Clearance comes through the 510K process, and approval comes from the PMA process. But market clearance is not the end of the race. Now what? You need to think QMS. So this is the typical story I get when people come to me and want a submission and they haven't started with me. They're like, we need it now. We want you to write us the 510K. We're ready. We've been through all of these things. And they don't call me when they need to because they think it's expensive. We don't need to spend money on regulatory. We're not ready for a 510K. But the problem is that if you look at when is the right time and the right place, the regulatory strategy is the right time is somewhere between like ideation and market validation. Your testing strategy, your budget, and your timelines need to be defined before really your first prototype, because they're going to inform the device specifications for your first prototype and keep you from prototype testing and your prototypes fail, and then you have to keep reiterating your testing. You're going to need some level of pre-QMS, at least like a set of design controls. You need to consider doing a pre-submission with the FDA, and this needs to be, your testing needs to be on a production equivalent run. After you get your clearance or approval, it is time for your full QMS prior to your first production run. You need to have a review of all your claims and marketing materials. And then you're going to need some ongoing maintenance activities for your quality management system. So the problem is when you don't get regulatory involved when you need it to, you have to build all of this retrospectively. And then that really is expensive. So it's just important to know when do you need that regulatory strategy? When do you need your quality management system, and build all of that, you know, from the concept, build it in and build it forward rather than trying to get in a time machine and build it retrospectively. So you're going to need all of the design files by the time you get to submission. You should have a complete design history file and these other design records. Your quality management system, even if you use a contract manufacturer, you're going to need this this minimum set of quality management system requirements.